Wow. I don't have a great way of fading that out in a way that would have been satisfactory. Someone in the chat was asking, what track is that? That's my friend's band, Merlin Wall. It's their album, Party at the Docks. That track is Jacket Weather. If you just search for Merlin Wall music, you can find it. I can also drop it into the Twitch chat. But welcome to the first live edition of 3 Beers Deep. For 2 weeks now, due to various personal circumstances, have not had an opportunity to record my weekly Q&A show. But I thought maybe the best way to handle it going forward is actually just to do it live on Monday mornings. I've been trying to do as many live streams just before work as possible. Sometimes it's Rocket League, sometimes it's other things. And this week, I think Monday mornings, we're going to try and make this 3 Beers Deep, a way to chat with you fine folks who have submitted questions over to patrickklubik.tumblr.com. And also, you can chime in with questions in the chat over here on Twitch, so feel free to drop those in there as well, and I'll go ahead and address some of those and mix them in as we work our way through this little Q&A. So thanks for joining me on this first one. You can, of course, find an archive of this at youtube.com/patrickklubik, and there will be a audio version on iTunes under the podcast inventory management. So with that, why don't I pull up my questions? So we've got the first one from Dix Avid. Dix AVD. Have you seen that 7-minute trailer for the Silent Hill Pachinko machine? Yes, I am aware that Konami continues their descent into casino hell, also known as the place where more reliable money is. And you know, I'm at this point, so there's also been a survey going around that people have been talking about in which Konami is asking people, like, what franchises are you interested in? What would you like Konami to revisit? What would you like to see them do in the future? And particularly, Silent Hill is not on there. One presumes that Silent Hill is not on there because they have an interest in creating Silent Hill games in the future. When the Kojima news was first starting to roll out and there were questions about the future of Metal Gear and Silent Hill, with the cancellation of Silent Hills and PT being pulled down from the PlayStation Store, Konami did sort of make a public commitment to making more Silent Hill games. Whether that actually means they're going to make more Silent Hill games is a question, or rather, maybe it's not will, but should they make more Silent Hill games? You know, the idea that they looked at PT and said, this isn't interesting enough to make, a little bit concerning. Now, it could be sort of a petty or more deep grievance between Hideo Kojima and Konami, in which PT is just caught in the crossfire, in which Konami looked at PT and said, we would like to make this into a full-fledged game, but because of this sort of bridge that we cannot gap between ourselves and one of our creative talents that we're having issues with, this game is just going to fall to the wayside. So do I think Konami will publish another actual Silent Hill game that is not casino-based? Yes. Do I wish they would maybe just... I would like to see them hand that franchise off and find an actual quality developer that makes something interesting. You know, who wouldn't want to see Frictional Games, who has Soma coming out in a couple of weeks, do something with Silent Hill? Now, granted, why would Frictional Games want to do that? I think there's certainly a valid question to be made that what kind of developer would want to work with a publisher like Konami, given their track record, given their history, given how they've treated that franchise? Are you the studio that wants to come in and work on that? I don't know if you want to kind of put that at your feet. So let's move on to the next question from Argonaut Lost. Sophie's Choice, Spelunky, or Rocket League? That's not very kind. I don't appreciate being forced to choose between the two of those, my friend. Right now, of course, the game of the moment is Rocket League. I am deeply loving the time I'm spending with Rocket League. It has taught me the value of multiplayer games. It is probably the first multiplayer game that I've spent significant time with in a competitive fashion since, gosh, maybe Halo, and even, yeah, you know what, Halo and Halo 2, I was in college. I did spend a ton of time playing those. I was trying to wonder, like, does it still count if I'm only playing against friends? Like in college, I was playing all sorts of LAN games of Halo and Halo 2 because all of our Xboxes were connected and hardwired to the same network. So you could actually just go into the local multiplayer LAN section of Halo and Halo 2, and you would find 5 or 6 games going just because that was sort of the de facto choice of the dorm. And so I have this profound respect for Rocket League because of what it has shown me about video games, about what it's like to play with other people, what's interesting about playing with strangers versus friends. And So, I mean, choosing between the two, I guess it's difficult because I'm enthralled with Rocket League right now. I feel like I'd have better perspective on this in 6 months or a year when the Rocket League fever has fallen off a little bit, and I can look at both Spelunky and Rocket League objectively, or at least with a little bit of distance. Because I'm, you know, if you were to tell me right now I had to give up playing Rocket League, I would take this coffee and I would throw it in your face. I'd be very upset with you. I would not want to engage in that sort of conversation at the moment. I don't want to give up Rocket League. I want to keep playing Rocket League. I wish I was playing Rocket League right now. In fact, let's just stop doing 3 beers deep and let's just play Rocket League. But we're not going to do that. We're going to keep doing 3 beers deep. But I will say that I think Spelunky. I think Spelunky. That is truly a Sophie's choice. I'm upset that Argonaut Lost even decided to ask that question because I don't like the fact that I have to choose between the two, and I really don't have a great answer because Spelunky is just such a fantastic game as well. That's a game I find myself torn because they aren't just favorite games of mine. They're games that have taught me things. They're games that have expanded what I believed was the repertoire of my interests. You know, there are games that have expanded the library of games that I am interested in downloading and playing and loving. And so I just have such a profound respect for both of them because of what they did for me as someone who deeply appreciates video games. Next up is from Epic Open World Zero. Also, if you have questions, please drop them into the chat, and I will make sure and mix those up in between these ones that I have plucked from my Tumblr account. With fall approaching and a lot of big releases about to come out, what is your game of the year so far? To me, it has to be either Bloodborne, Rocket League, or The Witcher. You know, what's with these questions in which you're asking me to choose, to make hard choices? Like, if I had to think about it right now, like if no other games were to come out, what I'd be wrestling with for my favorite game of the year is probably Bloodborne and Rocket League, in which Bloodborne I look at as this terrific evolution of the Dark Souls series, a reinvention of the formula that also adheres to the formula. It's a remix. It's an evolution. It made that series fresh again in a way that you looked at and go, wow, they could take this and they could put it into other genres, into other templates, and it would be incredible. And in fact, that's what From Software has talked about doing in the future. Like, why can't we make a ninja game like this? Why can't we make a sci-fi game like this? Why can't we make a mech game like this? And man, if there's just a soulsification of a lot of other settings and places, I'm in. I want to play those games because I think what Souls offers can modify other types of games in a way that enhances them or makes them more interesting. I think there are pieces of Souls to learn from that From Software or other developers can take and make, sort of understand why those games drive so much passion, why those games have folks just spending hundreds, if not thousands of hours with them. So that's, part of what makes me enjoy Bloodborne so much and why that would be sort of a top candidate. And then, I think you look no further than the fact that I don't play multiplayer games and I'm obsessed with the multiplayer game to show why Rocket League is one of the year's best. A surprise hit, to be sure, but it's not only just a surprise, it is a fantastic A-plus caliber video game that I can't get enough of, and months out I am still playing lots of, and I suspect we'll be playing lots of as the year goes forward. Static Austin says, I haven't played Rocket League and I'm already annoyed by it because every video game podcast that week felt they need to take an hour to talk about it and explain how Rocket League works. It is true that it's sort of like there was a collective moment when we all became obsessed with Rocket League. I think that's cooling off for a lot of people, or at least it's hitting that point as Mad Max and Metal Gear Solid 5 sort of kick off the fall video game season. But rest assured, if you like Rocket League, I will not be going away from that game anytime soon. W1 and Saul, have you seen the controversy surrounding Darkest Dungeon and the steps the developers have taken to address them? So broadly speaking, what he is speaking to is the fact that Darkest Dungeon is a game that's been in early access for a number of months now, a good part of the year, and it's been a huge success. I haven't played the game, actually, but it's a sort of dungeon crawler, roguelike. It's super hardcore. Some of the conceit is that all of your characters have, I think, random variables in which they have different psychological traits that sort of make you have to deal with them on an individual basis. Like maybe they're afraid of the dark or fire. Those may not be actual specific traits. I'm sort of just kind of generalizing the idea behind the game. And as that game has gone through early access, they have added new features, they have changed things, and that has not necessarily gone over 100% with the audience that fell in love with the game in the first place. And this is a sort of consequence or byproduct of doing games in early access, in which the audience starts to diverge from what the creators want to do. And the creators responded by introducing features or sort of toggles that allow you to turn off some of these more controversial or heated or disliked, however you want to sort of characterize it, new additions to Darkest Dungeon. And so is that the way that they should handle that, in which you just introduce a toggle that says, okay, if you don't like this stuff, I guess you don't have to turn it on? Or is early access supposed to be about feedback, but ultimately adhering to the creative whims of the developers? Where is the line between those? And by introducing a toggle, is that the developer saying, well, we're modifying what our vision is for this game just because people are used to another way of playing the game, but our true vision of the game all along did include these elements? And so I think it's a really complicated, interesting question that I'm curious what people in the chat think of, that suggests or illuminates a tension that does not exist in any other form of game development. This only exists when you do it in a public fashion in which people are allowed to weigh in which their opinions ostensibly are part of the process. It's the reason you go to early access. It's not just to get money to fund development as you head towards the finish line to produce a 1.0 version of that game. But it is to involve the player base, to have them make decisions, to have them make feedback. But when that starts to come in conflict with the creative vision, I mean, it's fascinating to watch. I don't think there are easy answers. I don't think there is one single answer. I think that's something that each developer, each community has to figure out for themselves, and raises other questions like, can the players be wrong? If they're conditioned to enjoy the game a certain way for the first 6 months, when features are introduced in the second 6 months, just because it's different, does that mean it's bad? Does that mean it's wrong? Does that mean the developers shouldn't continue down that path? What if by introducing those elements, you end up realizing, oh, this is actually what the game could be, or there are new things that I didn't realize were possible? I think that's all stuff that doesn't necessarily get taken into account when there's sort of initial kickback, but I'm curious to see how the dust settles on this, generally speaking. Electurium, can players be wrong? Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that the customer is always right, the player is always right. I'm only saying that when the player comes in conflict with the creative vision, where do you figure out how to fall on that? Do you err just on the side of the creative vision? Do you err just on the side of the players? Or is it somewhere in between? And how do you draw those lines? Purple Mustache asked, Patrick, you were right. Danganronpa is amazing. Got the first one on sale this week. Got halfway through, then went ahead and bought the second one. You were right. Danganronpa is a series that, like 999 and VLR, got me to understand what is interesting about visual novels. And, along the lines of Rocket League, of Dark Souls, of Spelunky, those are games that profoundly changed the way I looked at video games, generally speaking, which is to say, I sort of brushed off these as genres that I would never have any interest in. And then fortunately you get someone that comes along and says, hey, take my word for it. Do you usually like the other stuff I'm into? This is interesting. Someone did that for me, and it's been incredibly rewarding to do that for other people, in which I can say, hey, look, do you trust me? I know that you don't think you like visual novels. I know you think you don't like these types of games, but these games are interesting. These games are cool. And although you might feel a little friction about wanting to try these, or you might look at them and go, LOL anime, or LOL anime boobs, as was the case when I first looked at a lot of these games, because the visual novels have a tendency to err on the side of sexualizing their characters, because that's just part of, for some people, it's part of the appeal, and that is certainly true. But otherwise, I think they end up catering to a very hardcore, strict demographic in a way that can sometimes alienate other people who look at it and go, maybe that's not for me because that's not what I'm into. And that's how I felt. But then I played them, and yes, they do have these pandery moments that I've pointed out in my reviews and my commentary, but they have incredible characters, superb storylines, and they're just so much damn fun to play. So I do recommend, if you've never given visual novels a chance, the Danganronpa series is an excellent gateway into them. And then the other games I've played are 999 and VLR. 999 you can get on the iPad without the puzzles, but puzzles aren't the reason you're playing any of these games. You're playing them for the story. Not to say there couldn't be visual novels in which the sort of more gamey elements also are interesting and worthwhile, but for my money, the time that I spent with these games, it's primarily been about the story and the characters. McD's LPs. Scoops, do you have any plans to hop into Persona 5 when it arrives? I'm currently slowly but surely working my way through Persona 4. I've only played about 4 hours because the times when I thought I was going to play it, which was like on flights and time in between weddings and things like that, I fell asleep on the flights, and my cousins would drag me out to go get drinks before we go to various wedding events. So these large swaths of time that I thought I was going to dedicate to Persona 4 went poof. But I do have a flight coming up to PAX later this week, a flight back. And so I plan to kind of pluck my way through Persona 4. I don't know when I'm going to have time to like super dedicate myself to it, given that Mad Max and Metal Gear Solid 5 are coming out in the next couple of days, and those are both going to be sort of like big games that require a lot of time to work through. It sounds like Metal Gear Solid 5 is easily 40 plus hours to get through the storyline. Mad Max, I have to imagine, is one of 15, 20, 25, so that's September right there, in addition to kind of playing more Rocket League and whatever smaller games come out through the rest of the month. But I do want to play Persona 5. That's part of the reason I'm playing Persona 4, and I'm playing it on easy. So I'm not playing on an easiest. There's a normal, easy, and easiest. And easy mode, mostly trivializes the combat, but I'll still have to kind of learn what's going on. I just want to play Persona 4 for the story, to get a sense of the tone, the aesthetic, just what the Persona series is about, so that when Persona 5 comes out, I can be excited for it in a way that a lot of my friends are, in a way that a lot of other folks are, because I like getting on those bandwagons. It's fun to be excited for a new game, so if I can finish Persona 4 before Persona 5, that would make me a very happy boy. Nabeshin186 will be reviewing Danganronpa Another Episode. Comes out the same day as Metal Gear and Mad Max. No, I do have a code for Danganronpa Another Episode, which is the third-person shooter game for the Vita. I have downloaded it but not played it. I hope to share my thoughts in the future. I should probably actually boot that up so I can at least kind of check it out. But over at Kotaku, Jason Schreier is also a Danganronpa fanatic. I think Kirk Hamilton is also into that series as well. So I am not alone in my appreciation for Danganronpa over at Kotaku. One way or another, that game will get some love. Or not. I don't know if it's good. Maybe it's bad. I can certainly say when the next thing I wanted from the Danganronpa series was it was not a third-person shooter. So, Extreme Muffin Man asks, girl, when did you get verified on Twitter? Gawker just sort of took care of it. I don't know what that means. I had heard at one point that it cost a not significant amount of money in order to get verified. Sometimes it's a corporate thing where they make a deal with Twitter for whatever, I would assume ads and things like that, and then employees can become verified on Twitter. The thing is that in order to get verified on Twitter, I had to change my email address, my primary email address, to my Kotaku email address. And if I was ever to leave Kotaku and then lose access to that email address, I would no longer be verified. So even though I'm verified, it's only through my current employer, and that disappears the moment that you leave that employer. I also don't know what the benefit of being verified is. I know there's some analytics and some other tools, but I haven't touched them. It's just got a check mark. The one thing I have to be careful about is that I know that when you have a check mark, when you're verified, that it sends the messages you send to people, it automatically sends it as a push notification, even if you have push notifications for average people turned off. It's weird. It's weird. Smeat Base, what is your most disappointing game of the year so far, if you have one? Disappointing game of the year so far. Let me pull up my list of games that I've played in 2015. Resident Evil Revelations 2. I didn't have high hopes. You know what? Okay, here we go. Controversial choice, potentially. Axiom Verge. I am a huge fan of Metroid-style games. every time I'd seen Axiom Verge, I looked at it and went, girl, that is my type of video game. And yet when I played it, it fell flat for me. It didn't do a whole lot for me. It had, it went down the checklist. It felt like the type of game that I should be falling in love with. And even though I finished it I finished the whole game, and there were parts of it that I went, oh, this is really interesting. The way that it allows you to sort of use glitches as a gameplay mechanic, I thought was really smart and interesting. But the game just looked so bland. There is nothing memorable about how that game looked. I can't remember a single area in Axiom Verge, and the story was just sort of gobbledygook to me. I'm not even totally sure what happened at the end. I found that I was playing Axiom Verge to play Axiom Verge, not necessarily because I was enthralled by it. And that disappointed me because, with Nintendo not intent on making a Metroid game, at least for a little while now, maybe they're holding that for the NX, whatever the case may be, there's not official Metroid games. And so I was hoping there were games that were going to kind of fill that space. And I thought Axiom Verge was going to be that game for me. And instead, it turned out to be just a weird, profound disappointment. And that makes me sad, because I really wanted to like that game. I don't think it's a bad game, right? So I think there's a distinction to be made there. I don't think Axiom Verge is a bad game. I would recommend folks that are into Metroid-style games to check it out, because I think you might get something out of it that I didn't. Folks like Jeremy Parrish, who are big Metroid fans, Axiom Verge, by all accounts, seems to be their game of the year. So I may be sort of out on a limb on this one, but for me, Axiom Verge just sort of, it just kind of fell flat. Mike Gista, are you getting Gears this week? Probably not. I did enjoy Gears of War, but I've got so many other games coming up. I just cannot spare the time to play through the first Gears of War again. If that becomes sort of a games with gold, something in like November or December, I might be interested in checking that out. I'd like to pretty much just kind of screw around with the single player to see a little bit more of what Gears of War looks like in 2015. My guess is it still looks pretty gorgeous, but unfortunately I don't have any plans to check that out just yet, just because I only got so many hours in the day, my friends. Cypher, Cypher Tor. Sorry, I cannot pronounce your name. I think that's Tanya, though. Hello, Tanya. If I am incorrect about that, you had asked a question earlier. Let's see if I can scroll up to it. How are you feeling about Metal Gear Solid 5? Will you get it? I do. I do plan to get Metal Gear Solid 5. I will probably be playing it on the PC, presuming that is a good port. If it is not a good port, then I will just immediately load up PlayStation Network and download it on the PS4. But I am excited to play it. Ground Zeroes, I had a lot of problems with the story, and I think Kojima tends to not handle certain sensitive subjects with the sensitivity that they deserve, and he seems to wade into certain types of plot lines, and his certain sense of humor kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But Ground Zeroes, Ground Zeroes didn't do a lot for me. I played it, and granted, it is a much more mechanically competent version of Metal Gear. I will certainly say that Metal Gear has entered the 21st century, and the controls feel normal in a way that you want from a third-person shooter, or action game, I guess, rather. And the thing is, I thought Phantom Pain wasn't going to be for me, and then I kept watching more and more videos, and it's just like, man, there is so much going on in this game. And if I am being perfectly honest, it's one of those games that I feel like I just have to play because I need to know. The conversation around Metal Gear is one that I want to be informed by having played the game, experienced the game. And it's the end of an era. Regardless of whether Konami makes another one of these, by all accounts, Hideo Kojima is not going to be involved. And that makes Metal Gear Solid 5 an important moment in video game history. And so I intend to be part of that moment by being able to be informed in the dialogue about that game, both critically and positively. If I have interesting things to say about the game, I don't really know. Maybe I'll play the game and go, once again, it's not for me. I am one of those Metal Gear people that enjoyed 1 and 3, hated 2 and 4, and I know that divides people in a way that drives them up a wall, but that's just kind of how I feel. And so, yeah, I'm playing or want to play, because I don't have a copy yet, Metal Gear Solid 5 because it seems like a game I should play. Because if there are things about it that I want to talk about, I want to be able to speak authoritatively about it. I want to be able to say, I've played it. I'm not just watching videos. I'm not just reading other people's write-ups. I want to be able to say, here's how I feel about it because I've played this. And then I'll probably try and, mix that in with a little bit of Mad Max. But that's going to do it for 3 Beers Deep, this first live version of the show. I hope people have enjoyed tuning in here on Twitch. I think this is a great format for 3 Beers Deep. Unfortunately, I am gone Monday morning, so we may do 3 Beers Deep on Monday night because I am flying back from PAX Monday morning next week. So we might have to do this on Monday night when I return. Once I figure out my schedule, I'll make sure and let people know. But in the future, you can drop questions for 3 Beers Deep at patrickklupik.tumblr.com. So if you were wondering, where are some of these questions coming from? They weren't in the chat. Those were coming from my Tumblr account because not everyone can tune in live, and I want to give many people an opportunity to submit questions. You can watch the archive of this over at youtube.com/patrickklupik, and the MP3 version, the audio, the podcast version, is at Inventory Management on iTunes or inventorymanagement.simplecast.fm. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. I will see everyone tomorrow for hopefully some Rocket League.